interview. I'm pretty dry, so.
That's okay. This really, I'm getting video for it so I can go back and listen to it if I need to later.
Okay.
But really, it's just for paper. It's for print.
Okay.
So, all right, sir. My first question is, how do you guys feel about the best start to a season in the program's history?
The guys probably don't think of it that way as much, but obviously you appreciate any time that you're 8-0 or 1-0 every week. I think that's a lot of fun, and nobody's gonna pretend it's not. So anytime you get a chance to win that many games, you guys, it's good for them, and it kind of keeps everybody on board.
Okay. Now, is it something to where the coaches might feel differently from the players, or is that as a collective how you guys feel?
I don't think so. I think you enjoy it while it's going on, but at the same time, it doesn't change anything you do day to day or week to week.
Well, how do you guys feel about your chances of winning a national championship this year?
I think that's always the goal every year, and it's pretty much, it really, you can't, and the way our level of football is set up, just like a lot of different college sports and different sports, is if you don't take it one game at a time, 1 week at a time, you're really not doing what you're supposed to do, and it really doesn't help us at all to look ahead like that. But that's always the goal, to compete at the national level and win a national championship.
So you guys never try to get ahead of yourself. You really just take it one game at a time,
Right.
one opponent at a time.
Right.
Okay. All right, so. As far as specific players, what offensive player has really stood out to you guys, the coaches, this year? And maybe not, necessarily statistically, but on an overall level of just key, vital cog for this team.
Yeah, I think we've got a lot of senior guys. We've got, I don't know if there's one in particular, but always when your quarterback's playing really well, Alex Ross has done a great job, just being a good leader and being able to, you can put a lot on his shoulders and he can execute it. Football's important to him. Doing well is important to him, and obviously Tyler Farrell's having a great season, and then we have 3 senior wideouts and a bunch of young guys that are doing a really good job.
Yeah. Now, those just, you don't necessarily have to speak about just one. Are there any other offensive players really that have stood out for you guys, really kind of stepped up their game from last year?
I mean, I'd say the one that's improved a ton from last year would be Tyler Farrell. His performance this year compared to last year is.
What are the differences maybe between what he was doing last year and this year?
I think last year was his first year here, and so now it's his second year in the offense and second year in how we run things here. I think that's the biggest part of it.
So basically just exposure and experience to the offense.
Maturity, yeah.
Okay. What about defensively? Are there any defensive players or group of players that have really stood out to you guys?
There's a bunch of guys. There's a bunch of young guys. A bunch of the D linemen, Marcus Crowder and Jeffrey Sally have done a great job of stepping up and playing a lot of snaps. And Jeff played a bunch last year, but Marcus didn't play as much as a true freshman. And then those 2 guys really stuck out a lot. And Mike McClure, twin back, has always do a good job. Another one that's really started to play really well, that hadn't seen a whole lot of action, is Colton Blackburn as a backup linebacker. It's one that really sticks out. Special teams and just doing whatever he can do to help the team.
Okay, you said he's a backup, right? But
he's a starter, or he plays a good bit in some defensive packages.
So a situational player. Now, the past coastal teams we've had, they've been pretty good, but what are some of the major differences between this year's team, which is having a level of success that no other team here has really had, and the previous teams we've had here?
I think you don't ever really know. All I can talk about is what Coach Mobley has done since he's gotten here, and I think everybody's on board. It's the same mission, and guys have bought into that mission, and you can really see that now as we're getting into past the midway point in the second year. So I think consistent performance from our guys and everybody buying in what we're doing. I think that's the biggest thing.
Okay. Actually, my next question is, so this is your 4th year as the offensive line coach. So you worked under Coach Bennett previously as well, right? What are some of the differences between Bennett and Mobley as coaches, or what they implemented?
I think everybody has a different style of coaching. I think Coach Mobley is like I said, kind of the last question is, he's going to be consistent with focusing on the stuff that's really important, what matters to help us win football games. And
You mean like little details or big details as far as?
it's all the stuff you see in this room, like all that stuff.
Yeah.
BAM and being a man and standing on your own 2 feet and accepting responsibility for your actions. I mean, that's the biggest thing. Guys understand that concept, and that's our standard, and that kind of takes care of it.
Yeah, so taking responsibility and holding yourself
Right, and
accountable.
that's kind of everything you do. That's on the field, that's off the field. It may seem like one of those things coaches always say. You hear in the media all the time, but I've seen it in a lot of different staffs, a lot of different places, and it definitely holds true here from the standpoint. Coach Mobley doesn't play around with that. That's who we are, that's what we're gonna be, and that's what, we're trying to make our players understand.
Absolutely. Okay. Honestly, for you, our offense is averaging almost 50 points a game. I think it's like 47 point something to be exact. But our defense, particularly in the second half of all the games, they're averaging maybe just over 10 points allowing. What do you think is the biggest surprise? The way the offense is performing with 47 points a game, or the defense shutting it down in the second half and holding opponents to less than 10 points?
I don't think anything's a surprise. It's the biggest thing is I think our guys have learned, our players have learned, and that we have really good players here. We've got great talent on offense and defense, and it's up to them to kind of implement. We always have a good plan. We've got good coaches here, good staff, and we always have a good plan going in. And it's up for them to execute it. If you're watching a lot of the games on offense, usually when we are not moving the ball or whatever it is, it's because we're missing an assignment, or we don't execute something stupid, a personal foul in the last game, just an errant throw, a drop ball, a missed block, just something. Not anything where we're just getting whipped or anything like that, but more just on our execution. And I think the defensive guys would say the same thing. I don't get a chance to watch as much as those guys during the game or even during the week besides the practice, but I think they'd say the same thing where when they execute at a high rate, they play pretty well. When guys are moving in the right spot, not having missed assignments, they're playing pretty well. And I think that's part of it. In the second half, they get to settle in a little bit.
Yeah, does that count towards their accountability itself? Do you think they're holding themselves more accountable now than they have in the past, and that's what's the difference really in the success?
You talking about players in general? I don't know. I think all I can really speak on is the stuff that's happening now with Coach Mobley, and the guys that can't live up to our standard aren't gonna be on the team. They aren't gonna play for us. They're not gonna be starters. Not gonna be backups, and so everybody's got to be on the same page.
Okay, and that's where the BAM comes in. All right. Now, how is this team being built for not just to contend for a title this year, which you guys are very close to doing, but maybe for the future seasons as well?
Yeah, you're always doing that. It's a constant cycle. You got recruiting going on during the fall, carried on from last spring. It's a year-round deal. You've got camps all summer where you evaluate talent. It's a constant evaluation process to see if there's other guys out there at the high school level, prep school level, that can help us have better team, have better individuals on the team, and help us have better football players. Because you definitely don't want to bring in guys. You want to bring in talented guys like everybody else, but if you miss on a couple guys from a character standpoint or academically or something like that, then you know, they're not gonna be here very long anyway, so it doesn't really help you,
Yeah.
so.
Now, as far as the recruiting is going, has the success you guys had, you know, this year and last year, has that helped you bring in better players?
I'm sure, you know, it's hard, you never know. It's hard to tell, because we don't really care much about, there's a lot of hype out there about ratings and stars and who's offered who and all that, and the greatest thing about the way Coach Mobley does stuff and Coach Bailey, our recruiting coordinator, is we don't really care much about that. If we feel like with our evaluation, with watching as much access there is to highlights and game film on kids now with all the technology, being able to watch them, go see them practice in person during the spring or during the fall, see them at camps and being able to talk to them on the phone once a week, all those things, all that stuff combined, you can get a pretty good sense of what type of player you're gonna get and what type of individual you're gonna get. So all the rivals rating and all that junk and what you see in the papers, you know, probably a lot of that is misinformation as opposed to real stuff, and so we don't really care a whole lot about that. So long story short, long explanation short, I think it's hard to tell. I think we feel like we've got a couple kids committed, we feel like we're getting some really good players because we're having more success. I think it draws more attention for sure. You know, we think we're getting pretty good players, but it's hard to tell how they'll turn out until they get here for a couple
Yeah, I
years.
hear you. Now, the recruiting staff itself, you guys feel like it's doing a better job than it has in previous seasons?
I don't think anything's a whole lot different. We're expanding a whole lot more. You know, we go up and down the East Coast. We even go out in the Midwest a little bit. So, besides that, I think we're recruiting, you know, here we're trying to recruit guys that, like I said, that we know are gonna be here, they're gonna buy into what we wanna do, we don't play around with it, and they wanna be here, they wanna be a Coastal.
What do you think Coach Moakley's influence is on these kids that are coming in?
I think guys wanna, you know, the right individual is gonna be impressed with Coach Mobley and, his background. It's different than any other head college coach in Division I anywhere. And, he's got something that nobody else has, you know. There's nobody, you know, at LSU or Alabama or anywhere else that has Coach Mobley's background and insight as far as that goes in the business side of things. You know, I think.
Okay, you
we've
mean
got-
like as far as his,
Right.
his expenditures with,
Yeah.
was it TD?
Mhm. So I think that to a certain type of kids that are looking for, you know, a career in that would be appealing to them.
Yeah.
And just from the standpoint of being able to learn under a guy that's been that guy, you know.
So you think maybe he gets recruits better, like as far as, like his understanding of them? Is that what you're kind of
No,
saying?
I'm just saying that could be appealing to a kid. That
Yeah.
could be appealing
Well,
to a
with his,
recruit.
well, with his business background, like you were saying, it brings something that a lot of college coaches don't have,
Right.
that experience, and with that, do you think that
No, I
helps
think,
out with recruiting?
no, I think the thing about Coach Mobley that helps with recruiting is he understands, because when he was coaching before he got into business, he understands that a lot of the recruiting stuff is, a lot of talk, and, what's important is our coaches' evaluation on film, what they see in person, not what anybody else says, and what's on their high school transcript and what's on their, you know, what's on their film. You know, when we talk to them face to face, he understands that it's really not important what those 3 or 4 stars are and all that crap, you know, because we don't know the people that are rating those people. Who rates all that stuff? I mean, that's.
Yeah.
So from that standpoint, I think that's uncommon. That piece of it is uncommon among college coaches. Everybody else gets wrapped up from pressure from fans and media to pull in a big sign class
Yeah,
based on
from
that.
ESPN rankings and rival rankings.
And when you look at that, if you probably compared the kids that go on to play in the NFL versus how many stars they had, I guarantee it would probably shock you. So,
I just got one final question,
Mhm.
sir. What do you guys think it'll take for you to win the title this year?
I think just the same stuff we've been doing. You know, we're gonna have to execute at a high rate and just guys continue to do what they're doing week in and week out. All right?